Alright, this is Justice League Act of God from DC Comics, and this is the first issue of an event miniseries that I have not heard anyone ever talk about. I didn't even know if this was ever finished, because it is book 1 of 3, but this comes from the time when sometimes comics, they would come out and do the first issue and then just never be finished. This is the only one I have, and I only got it because I love this cover. This is a brilliant cover, but I don't know if this story is good in the end, or even if this comic exists. I might have imagined this. You might be watching a video of me like holding thin air, and I'm just imagining a comic here with a really good cover with a bunch of characters defeated. You might just be seeing the back of a sofa. We open up with a nice establishing splash page showing the Justice League. This is the Van Morrison team. It's from that time period. But they're not the only stars, because this is like a Christmas on Infinite Earths thing. So there's loads of other characters who are in it as well, like the Tiny Titans. And the story here is that there's a... Get this right. It's called Justice League Act of God. And then there is an Act of God. And all the superheroes, they lose their superpowers. Like Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston. He reverts to Biffy Baston. And then Albino Man, he's back to his human form. And we just see the way that losing powers affects all these characters in the DC universe. It's quite an interesting idea, although there is a problem in that we've got Superman. Superman loses his powers when they are not superpowers. They are his natural Kryptonian attributes. But I understand that the story kind of has to ignore that. The same with Aquaman here and Wonder Woman. I guess we just have to assume that it affects anything that could be classed as a superpower. Mind you, I'd also say that Green Lantern's ring shouldn't be affected, because that isn't a superpower. It's an item that harnesses energy. But you can get around that quite easily by saying that this eponymous Act of God also just removed the power source. So Green Lanterns, the Kyle Reese version, he gets his arse kicked by Claw. And the Flask, the Wally West version, he isn't fast anymore. And Superman, he hurts his hand. It's all actually quite well done. It's built up and explored fairly decently. But there's just all these little things that didn't quite work. Like another one is that somehow the Act of God, it affected Steel Superman. And Steel Superman, he's just wearing armour. Man-made armour. And then on the next page we have got Blue Beetles and Booster Gold, and we see that it does not affect them because, well, they didn't have superpowers, they just use technology. But that contradicts what's going on with Steel Superman. He uses technology, his armour. Maybe all these things are explained in the next issue if it actually exists, and maybe I'm just being a bit picky hour now. All the heroes, they get together on Watching Tower to work out what's happening. And I do bloomin' love whenever we have shit like this. I'm a proper sucker for this. Big superhero gatherings where they're all crammed onto a page. I bloody love it. And now, Blue Beetles and Booster Gold and Batman and like the Batman family, they're the ones who are unaffected because they didn't have superpowers. And they take the lead as the main heroes. And Vision, well, he has lost his shape-shifty powers, so he's stuck in his true alien form. There it is again. And Kyle Reese, he's written terribly. He's treated like a whiny little child who is angry that he got beat up by Claw. And this bit here, it's bordering on having him hit his girlfriend. So that's just lovely, isn't it? So now we see how it affects the super villains. It's the same thing as happened with them. but again a bit contradictory. We got bicycle Superman in the background there, we've got a robot up front, and some characters in armour. It didn't affect them, but it affected Steel Superman. Superman, though, he's struggling to deal with the fact that he can't save everyone. Now that he's lost his powers, he feels like really helpless. We got some more Kyle Reese yelling at his girlfriend. Let's just skip that. Here we see a montage of heroes who didn't have superpowers to begin with, stopping various villains. Even though some of the baddies definitely have superpowers. I mean, he's a robot, but his power is that he copies superpowers. So what is he copying? How is he powerful? Then Mr. Terrifical shows up to help Blue Beetles and Booster Gold fight against Covenant here from the Van Morrison run. Then we get all the heroes gathered together again to once more try and work out what's happening. And there's a great sense of hopelessness to it all. Like here we got the Flask, Wally West, kind of accepting the inevitable, that it was just an act of God. Well, I don't like this stuff here with Kyle Reese having anger issues and being like an angry little man. Then Steel Superman, he makes another suit of armour, even though the last one just switched off. And the rest of the issue is about him getting his arse kicked by a gigantic robot. Like, he really does get his arse kicked. He fares terribly in this fight, and it ends with him utterly defeated. I don't know where this story goes. I don't know if anything happens or is explained. I don't know what caused the power loss, if it's not an act of God. But it's alright. If it exists and I've not fabricated it in my mind, it's got some nice art and an okay story. It's got a great cover. 7 thumbs up, I guess.